Well, I met through his girlfriend back in 1999, and I'd known her since she was at university in the UK. And it would be, to some extent, a stretch to say that as it were, we were close friends. I mean, we were friends because of other people.
Prince Andrew's name now echoes through Buckingham Palace with a chill few expected. Just 3 minutes ago, the royal family confirmed devastating news that left Britain stunned. Some speak of a sudden health crisis, others hint at a private scandal or a final reckoning long in the making. Inside the palace, aides are shaken, phones left unanswered, and official silence hangs heavier than any crown. But what secret could strike at the heart of royalty with such haunting, irreversible force? The day, the palace, fell. Silent. The announcement came like thunder over Buckingham Palace, sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. It wasn't just another royal statement, it was a line drawn through history. 3 minutes before the world heard it, the air inside the palace was already heavy with what was about to unfold. When the message finally appeared, it was brief, cautious, and written in the measured tone for which the royal household is known. But between each line, emotion pulsed like an unspoken truth. For years there had been whispers, hushed voices in corridors, cautious headlines, and endless speculation. Prince Andrew's place in the royal family had long been uncertain, surrounded by controversy, retreat, and public silence. But this time, there was no denial, no waiting for clarity, no promise of a future return. The palace confirmed what many had begun to fear. Prince Andrew would permanently withdraw from public life. It was not a temporary suspension, not a pause for reflection. It was final. A closing chapter in a royal story once built on service, ceremony, and duty. Yet what gave the message such gravity wasn't the decision itself, but the reason behind it. For months, quiet rumors had circled. Whispers of declining health, of stress too heavy to conceal, of a man under immense pressure both within and beyond the palace gates. The official statement, though brief, carried a rare softness. It spoke of medical concerns, privacy, and the need for care. Words that peeled away the formality and exposed something deeply human. For the first time in years, the narrative shifted. What had once been viewed through the lens of scandal began to look more like fragility. The image of a disgraced prince gave way to that of a man confronting his limits, a reminder that even in the grandeur of royalty, no one is shielded from human struggle. For Prince Andrew, the impact must be devastating. Born into the heart of a monarchy, his life had always revolved around duty, public service, and the silent weight of expectation. To have that identity stripped away, not by decree alone, but by the quiet necessity of circumstance, is a loss beyond ceremony. No more military patronages, no more royal engagements, no more red carpets or official portraits. The routines that once shaped his existence have vanished, leaving him to navigate a quieter, lonelier path. Within the family, the consequences are deeply felt. For King Charles, it is another test of leadership, the painful task of balancing blood against duty. For Princess Anne and Prince Edward, it is the ache of watching their brother falter, burdened by choices and consequences that cast long shadows over the family's legacy. And though she is no longer here, the echo of Queen Elizabeth's lifelong dilemma lingers, the eternal struggle between a mother's compassion and a monarch's responsibility. Behind the palace gates, there is no celebration of justice or vindication, only quiet grief. A family that once projected unity now carries the private weight of heartbreak. What the world sees as a headline is, for them, a wound, the cost of silence, of scandal, and of being royal in an age that no longer forgets. The crown remains, gleaming as ever, but beneath its shine lies the unmistakable truth. Even empires can break from within. But what if the true fracture isn't in the monarchy's image, but in its heart? And could that wound ever quietly heal? Stay with us to uncover the truth. The crown under strain. The shock of Prince Andrew's permanent withdrawal from royal life has rippled far beyond the palace walls, striking at the very heart of the British monarchy. In the hours following the announcement, the sense of unease was unmistakable, as if centuries of tradition had been shaken by a single, irreversible decision. Every time the royal family faces a crisis, the same haunting questions return. Can the monarchy still inspire trust? Can it still lead with dignity in a world that demands truth over loyalty? Prince Andrew's removal does not alter the official line of succession, yet its impact runs far deeper than titles or protocol. It reshapes the face of representation, changing who the public sees as worthy of standing beside the crown. For King Charles, who has spent his reign trying to modernize and preserve an institution built on image and restraint, the decision is both practical and painful. It shows that the monarchy, for all its ceremony, remains vulnerable to the flaws of its members. One person's fall can cast a shadow that stretches across generations. Public confidence, already fragile from years of royal turbulence, now faces another test. The monarchy's strength has always rested on its ability to embody stability, discipline, and moral example. Yet, Andrew's troubled past, followed by this final sorrowful announcement, has reopened wounds that were barely healed. Across Britain, voices rise in frustration and fatigue. People want transparency, accountability, and proof that the royal family no longer shields its own when truth demands exposure. Forcing Andrew's permanent retreat is a necessary gesture, but rebuilding trust will take more than a statement. Scars from silence and scandal linger longer than the headlines that expose them. History has shown how swiftly the royal image can fracture under pressure. In 1936, Edward VIII's abdication for love shook the monarchy's foundations and redefined its boundaries between personal freedom and duty. In 1997, the death of Princess Diana unleashed a storm of grief and anger so intense, it nearly severed the bond between the crown and its people. More recently, the departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reignited debates about independence, race, and the relevance of the monarchy in a world that demands openness over obedience. Each crisis carries its own story, but the pattern remains painfully familiar. Scandal exposes the cracks beneath the ceremony. Tragedy reveals the cost of silence. Rebellion forces the family to confront the change it has long resisted. And each time, the monarchy must decide whether to cling to its traditions or adapt to survive. It does survive, but never without consequence. Every storm leaves a scar. Every reform takes something from the mystique that once made the crown seem untouchable. Prince Andrew's fall is not just his own reckoning. It is another turning point in the monarchy's long and uneasy evolution. His retreat will redefine how the royal family must act, how it must communicate, and how it must prove its relevance to a public that no longer accepts the weight of history as a shield. The monarchy endures because it bends, not because it resists. But each bend comes at a cost, and the question now is whether even the crown can bear the strain of so many fractures. So how did one man's downfall ripple so far that it forced the crown itself to question its own survival? Stay tuned. The statement that shook the silence. The words were composed with royal precision, formal, respectful, and measured, yet beneath the polished tone, emotion trembled through every line. It wasn't a long statement, but its impact was instant, echoing far beyond the palace walls. Within moments, the announcement about Prince Andrew had circled the globe, leaving a trail of confusion, sorrow, and speculation. It spoke of challenges faced, struggles endured, and circumstances that now demanded both privacy and compassion. For a family known for restraint and controlled messaging, the honesty of this moment was startling. What caught many by surprise was not only what the palace said, but how it said it, and when. There had been no advance whispers to the press, no gentle prelude through sources close to the family. The message appeared suddenly, distributed through official royal channels, as if the palace could no longer afford to wait another hour. Reporters scrambled, news anchors interrupted broadcasts, and within minutes, cameras filled the pavements outside Buckingham Palace and Windsor. The tone was described as somber, even mournful, with commentators noting that the phrasing carried a sense of inevitability, as though something long denied had finally been accepted. For years, the royal approach to Prince Andrew's situation had been silence. When controversies grew too loud, palace doors shut quietly. When headlines turned damaging, tradition and protocol were used as shields. The strategy was to wait, to let time blur the sharp edges of public outrage. But now, that strategy has clearly collapsed. This was a new tone, one that replaced evasion with acknowledgement. It was as if the veil that had long hidden Andrew's reality had finally been lifted, revealing not scandal alone, but vulnerability. Every word of the statement was chosen with surgical care. Instead of distancing themselves from him as they once did in earlier press releases, the royal family spoke in collective terms, phrases like standing together, facing challenges, and supporting one another. It was a subtle but striking shift, suggesting that despite everything, the family was no longer speaking about Andrew, but with him. Yet even in that gesture of unity, there was a faint echo of finality, a sense that something had ended quietly, even as sympathy was offered publicly. Observers immediately began parsing every line, searching for clues hidden in tone and timing. Why now? What had changed inside Buckingham Palace to make them speak so openly? Was it the culmination of private struggles, a medical reality, or internal pressure from the king himself? The statement offered no answers, only hints. It revealed enough to stir emotion, but not enough to satisfy curiosity. That deliberate ambiguity gave the message its haunting power. It was like a curtain pulled halfway back. The light revealed the outline, but not the face. The palace had finally broken its silence after years of calculated quiet. But in doing so, it had only deepened the mystery. Behind those carefully balanced words lies a truth too heavy for ceremony, too human for royal detachment, a truth that, once revealed, could change how history remembers Prince Andrew forever. And how could a message meant to restore dignity instead tighten the shadows around a fallen prince, exposing more than it concealed? Stay glued. The fall of a once favored prince. For decades, Prince Andrew's name carried both admiration and controversy, a blend of royal charm and relentless scrutiny that few could withstand. His story is one of sharp contrasts. A man once celebrated as a national hero who would, in time, become one of the most divisive figures in modern royal history. When he was young, Andrew embodied the image of a confident and daring prince. He was known for his charisma, his sense of adventure, and, above all, his service to the nation. As a helicopter pilot during the Falklands War in 1982, he risked his life in combat, earning the respect of his fellow servicemen and the admiration of the British public. For a time, he represented everything the monarchy wanted to project: courage, loyalty, and a touch of modern energy. But as the years went on, the glow that once surrounded him began to dim. Small controversies, once dismissed as harmless indulgences, slowly became warning signs of deeper flaws. His extravagant lifestyle, questionable friendships, and frequent trips abroad began to clash with the quiet dignity expected of a senior royal. There was a growing sense that Andrew enjoyed the privileges of royalty without fully embracing the discipline it required. Still, the public's fascination with him persisted, and for a while, his missteps were treated with indulgence, the kind of leniency often granted to a charming yet wayward member of the family. That indulgence, however, could not survive what came next. The turning point arrived when Prince Andrew's name became entangled with one of the darkest scandals of modern times, his association with Jeffrey Epstein. The connection was catastrophic. Images, testimonies, and mounting evidence tied Andrew to a man whose crimes shocked the world. What began as whispers of poor judgment soon grew into a global outrage that demanded accountability. And when Andrew finally broke his silence in a 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, what was meant to be a chance for redemption became an unforgettable disaster. His performance was awkward and detached, marked by explanations that baffled viewers and a tone that lacked even the faintest trace of empathy for Epstein's victims. Instead of repairing his reputation, the interview destroyed it. Within hours, headlines around the world condemned his words. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. The Queen, in one of the most difficult decisions of her reign, approved his withdrawal from royal duties for the foreseeable future. The once active prince was suddenly silent, stripped of public engagements, and abandoned by many of his longtime charitable partners. Overnight, the man once hailed as a war hero had become a symbol of privilege gone unchecked, a cautionary tale about the dangers of detachment and entitlement within the walls of monarchy. Public tolerance gave way to disappointment, and then anger. Every past indulgence was reinterpreted through the lens of scandal, and every gesture of defiance deepened the wound. For most people, mistakes fade with time. For Prince Andrew, they followed him, magnified by fame, frozen in headlines, replayed endlessly in the court of public opinion. What could have been private regrets became global judgment. His past, once defined by service and duty, was now inseparable from disgrace and consequence. And with the royal family's latest announcement, that history no longer feels distant. It presses painfully into the present, shaping how the world will remember him for generations to come. How did a prince once hailed as a war hero become the monarchy's deepest wound? And what truth still hides behind that royal silence? The crown at war with itself. For centuries, the British monarchy has stood as a symbol of endurance, polished, graceful, and unshaken even through the storms of history. Yet when the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew erupted into public view, that image began to fracture. What had once been whispered behind the guarded doors of Buckingham Palace could no longer be hidden. The royal facade of unity was breaking, and for the first time in decades, the crisis was not about politics, policy, or protocol. It was about family. Inside the palace, Queen Elizabeth II was said to have carried the burden most heavily. To the world, she was a figure of composure and strength, the unmovable anchor of a nation. But behind closed doors, she was a mother facing the unbearable truth that her son's actions had thrown the crown into disrepute. Those close to her would later describe these months as among the most painful of her long reign. Moments where her heart and her duty collided. She had always believed the monarchy's survival depended on discipline and dignity, yet she also believed that motherhood required compassion. In Andrew's downfall, those two instincts were irreconcilable. The decision for Prince Andrew to step back from royal duties was not made lightly. It was a public act of consequence and a private act of sorrow. For Elizabeth, it was both a defense of the institution she had devoted her life to and a quiet acknowledgement of maternal grief. The image of her standing firm, even as her son's future collapsed, came to define the late years of her reign. a sovereign forced to choose between love and legacy. For her eldest son, the then Prince of Wales, the crisis carried a different kind of weight. King Charles had long envisioned a modern monarchy, slimmer, more transparent, built on trust rather than tradition. But Andrew's scandals cut directly against that vision, dragging the family into headlines that clashed with everything Charles hoped to preserve. He recognized that saving the monarchy might mean severing personal ties, or at least keeping them at a distance. His approach was measured, even cold at times, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. In private, those who knew him sensed the conflict beneath the surface, a brother's pain hidden beneath a leader's resolve. Princess Anne, ever the pillar of practicality, reportedly had little patience for the damage caused by Andrew's behavior. Her life had been defined by service, long hours, quiet dedication, unbroken duty. And to her, his actions were a betrayal of everything the family represented. Prince Edward, quieter and less confrontational, was said to have offered quiet empathy while recognizing the same hard truth. The monarchy's image could never fully recover. Within palace walls, late-night conversations circled endlessly around the same impossible question: family or institution, blood or crown. They were bound not only by lineage but by the unrelenting glare of the public eye. Every decision, every silence, every expression became a signal to the nation. And as the crisis deepened, it revealed something profoundly human beneath all the royal ceremony: a family torn between protecting one of their own and protecting the legacy that defines them all. It is a conflict that echoes far beyond palaces and titles. When loyalty to those we love threatens to destroy what we've built, where does duty end and compassion begin? But what did those whispered debates truly reveal? A family shielding their own, or a monarchy quietly preparing to erase him forever? Keep watching. Echoes of a fallen prince. Once, Prince Andrew stood as one of Britain's most admired royals, a figure of charm, confidence, and courage. In the 1980s, his role in the Falklands War earned him praise as a modern royal hero, fearless in the skies and loyal to his country. Newspapers dubbed him the People's Prince, and television captured the nation's pride. He seemed approachable, grounded, and refreshingly different from the stiff image of monarchy. A man of tradition, yet relatable to ordinary citizens. But admiration, as history proves, is fragile. By the early 1990s, whispers of indulgence and extravagance began to overshadow his image. Luxurious trips, glittering parties, and questionable associations made him appear distant from a Britain facing social change. Tabloids that once celebrated him now turned skeptical, transforming warmth into unease. By the mid-2000s, the unease had hardened into criticism. The Playboy Prince label stuck, and the admiration of earlier decades was replaced by disappointment. Public trust eroded as people asked, "What happened to him?" Then came the scandal that destroyed his reputation. His ties to Jeffrey Epstein turned public unease into outrage. Suddenly, this was not about extravagance but morality, accountability, and justice. The infamous Newsnight interview cemented his downfall. Millions watched his awkward answers and tone-deaf defenses, seeing not strength but blindness to consequence. The global reaction was swift and brutal. Headlines erupted, polls showed collapsing support, and demands for his withdrawal from public life grew louder. That interview became defining. It didn't just damage him, it ended him. What followed was a dramatic fall from grace. The streets that once cheered his bravery now whispered his disgrace. His story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly admiration can dissolve into condemnation. In the court of public opinion, forgiveness rarely comes easily, and Andrew's case offered no clear path to redemption. Behind palace walls, the personal cost has been profound. Those close to him describe a man wrestling with regret, haunted by the weight of being defined by scandal. Meetings with advisors are said to be tense, filled with cautious discussions of rehabilitation, withdrawal, or quiet exile. Words like rebuilding hover in the air, but so does resignation. The family carries its own burden. Queen Elizabeth once faced the agony of balancing love for her son with duty to the throne. Now, King Charles shoulders that same responsibility, keeping his brother at arm's length to protect the monarchy's future. Within royal gatherings, Andrew is present yet apart, standing at the edges of photographs, offering polite smiles, but never reclaiming the spotlight. For a man raised to walk at the center of royal life, this muted existence may be the harshest punishment of all. The grandeur of palaces no longer shields him from isolation, and his titles bring no comfort. Behind the ceremony lies a painful truth. Power, once lost, leaves not only scandal, but emptiness. And in the silent corridors of royalty, the echoes of a fallen prince remain, a reminder of how swiftly fortune can fade. So if a prince once destined for glory is now trapped in silence, could the monarchy itself survive echoes of his shadow? Don't miss this part. The shadow that lingers. As the British monarchy turns its page to a new era, one story still lingers like an echo that refuses to fade, the story of Prince Andrew. His legacy stands at a complicated crossroads, woven together by threads of bravery, scandal, and regret. It is a tale that mirrors the fragility of reputation and the high cost of public life. For some, Andrew will forever be remembered as the fearless naval officer who risked his life during the Falklands War, flying missions through danger and earning his place as a national hero. For others, his name now evokes controversy, a symbol of how quickly admiration can curdle into disillusionment. His life, once celebrated, has become one of the monarchy's most painful tests in modern memory. The decision to permanently remove Prince Andrew from royal duties marked the quiet end of an era. No lengthy statements were needed. The silence said enough. It was the monarchy's way of drawing a line that both protected the institution and served as a public acknowledgement of consequence. His withdrawal from public life was not simply a royal adjustment, but a reflection of something deeper, a reckoning. It signaled that even within the most powerful family in Britain, no one is untouched by accountability. The crown may forgive, but it does not forget. Yet behind the ceremony and protocol lies the human truth, one that cannot be neatly summarized in press releases or headlines. Andrew is not just a fallen prince. He is a man grappling with the aftermath of choices that changed everything. A son who mourned the loss of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and a brother who stands at the edges of a redefined royal family. He is also a father whose daughters must navigate the delicate balance of love and legacy, growing up under the shadow of their father's mistakes. His retreat from the public eye reflects not only discipline from above, but the quiet ache of a man learning to live with irreversible consequences. In many ways, his story mirrors the struggle of countless families. When one member falters, the ripple spreads to everyone. Except here, the ripples extend far beyond the walls of Windsor. They touch the heart of a nation, challenging its trust in an institution built on image and restraint. The emotional toll, balancing loyalty with duty, love with disappointment, is one the world can recognize, even if lived under unimaginable scrutiny. Now, the question that lingers is not just about Andrew's fate, but about the monarchy's endurance. Can redemption ever find its way back into a story this damaged? Or has history already made up its mind? Across centuries, the royal family has weathered many storms, from the abdication of Edward VIII to the heartbreak of Princess Diana, and more recently, the departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Each crisis forced the monarchy to evolve, to redefine what it means to be royal in a changing world. Andrew's story, however, feels different. It is less about rebellion and more about reckoning, less about departure and more about erasure. And yet history is unpredictable. It softens for some, hardens for others. Whether Prince Andrew will ever reclaim a measure of grace or remain forever in exile is a question that time and public memory will decide. His story now belongs not to him alone, but to the institution he once represented and the people who watched it unfold in real time. It will be studied, debated, and remembered as one of the most defining chapters of modern royalty. Because beneath the weight of crowns and titles, the truth remains universal. Even princes stumble, and power cannot shield anyone from the consequences of being human. The tragedy of Prince Andrew's legacy is not just in what was lost, but in what remains unresolved. And somewhere between public judgment and private pain lies the haunting question that may never fade. Can a fallen prince ever truly be forgiven? So what do you think? Has Prince Andrew's story become a tale of redemption waiting to unfold, or a royal shadow that will haunt history forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.